And now, Move the Sticks with Daniel Jeremiah.
What's up, everybody? Daniel Jeremiah here with Bucky Brooks. This is Move the Sticks. And Bucky, we don't have to talk about preseason.
No.
We don't have to talk about what we think might happen or what could happen. We actually have real NFL football to evaluate today on the show. I am so excited.
Yeah, I'm really excited. We finally have week one in the books. We saw all of our teams really play for real football. People played the entire game. We saw more than vanilla schemes, and so we get an opportunity to really evaluate players and where they are today.
And for those who don't know me, I scouted the NFL. Bucky scouted the NFL as well as played in the NFL. Bucky, week one of the season, I always try. You look, a lot of times you're out on the road. I always tried to make sure that I was, could find a sports bar.
Yeah.
You got to make sure that you can watch your team play. And there's nothing more miserable than being, you're out, you're grinding on the road already, scouting college players. You get to your hotel to watch your team. Everybody thinks they're going to be good, right? Build up all that anticipation, all that excitement, and you go sit in that sports bar and watch your team just get smashed. There's no worse feeling in the world.
No, and the natural tendency is to overreact. The sky is falling. We can't get it turned around. What is going to happen to our squad? But hopefully you have a little perspective. You understand it's week one. The team can progress throughout the year, but it's hard when you're on the road and you're so detached from your team that you're looking at them and there's nothing that you can do except try and find players that can help them for future years.
Yeah, players don't get issued Hall of Fame jackets after 1 week, and we don't need to cut anybody after 1 week. Let's kind of let this
Pump
thing
the brakes
marinate.
a little bit. Let's see.
Let it marinate for a little bit. I know we have got a jam-packed show. I'm looking at our sheet here of all the stuff we're going to cover, and it is it's not one sheet, it's two sheets. We've got a lot of topics to hit today. TD, why don't you fill everybody in on what's coming?
What is going on, guys? And before I do, just a quick note. I put out a tweet yesterday asking for people to send in their questions, Twitter or YouTube. Please do that. We're not going to be able to hit it on today's show, but next show, which is Wednesday, we'll definitely hit your questions. Scout School. You know I love Scout School. For today's show, though, we're doing Scout Notes. Week one Scout Notes. What stood out to you guys? We're also going to talk about top throws from the week. Coach Brian Billick is going to be on with the show later on in the show today. And obviously, let's start off with Jameis Winston and Marcus Mariota, who both, started off their NFL careers, but in very different fashion.
Yeah, no, that was a game I was definitely paying attention to, Buck. I know we were both working during the game, doing our thing, but you always try and pick out a couple games to really try and focus on. That was one for me. Just kind of your overarching thought. We'll dig into it a little bit deeper here, but your overarching thought from that contest.
A little bit of a surprise. A little bit of surprise in terms of how well one guy prepared their young quarterback to play and set him up for success. And in Tampa with Jameis Winston, not only how poorly he played, but the theme is how poorly that offensive line performed. And so a lot of things that both guys have to continue to work on, but it would be interesting to see these guys and follow them throughout the remainder of the season to see who has the better rookie year.
I know we talked before, right after the games where we had caught up with one another, and I thought we both agreed on this point that the game plan, you talked about Ken Wisnut, what he did for Marcus Mariota, I thought was outstanding. A lot of their plays, when you study this game, you're going to see a lot of it off of run action. You're playing against a Tampa Bay defense, likes to play a lot of two safety. So the middle of the field is where you're going to try and target. But the linebackers in that scheme, that's where they're responsible for. They got to get back in coverage. Well, you hold those linebackers with all that run action. I thought we saw that with Mariota. Hold them and then throw to the replace void, and we saw him do it time in and time again in this game.
Yeah, when you think about this offense, it appears to be built on run-pass option plays. There we see the play fake. We see a seam route coming. It's a void right behind the linebacker. For Mariota, it really simplifies the read for him. It's pick and throw. If you see the linebackers come up, you throw the thing. If you don't, you hand it to the running back. Easy for Marcus Mariota, something that he did a lot at Oregon.
Yeah, he toyed with linebackers. Oftentimes we talk about a quarterback being able to control safeties with his eyes. He was able to control the linebackers with his ball handling. He was able to pull them up. You see him even move a little bit to the right, and you're going to throw a slant on the backside. He was able to manipulate them time in and time again. Even when they get down on the goal line, Bucky, you see him. He's just going to wheel out right here. Just a little token fake, a little token run fake, and you get Levante David to settle his feet. Next thing you know, you get somebody in the flat, and you've got another touchdown. So it was beautifully designed. Take nothing away from Mariota. He executed. He was fantastic. Anytime you have 4 touchdowns, 3 incompletions, you're doing something right. But I just thought the orchestration, how they put this together, coupled with some god-awful defense from Tampa Bay.
Yes.
That's what you get. You get a phenomenal performance by Mariota.
Great performance. And also it took advantage of the fact that the Tampa Bay Buccaneers are a team that primarily plays a lot of zone coverage. You can run those run-pass option reads against teams in the zone because they have dual responsibilities. The challenge would be for Marcus Mariota going forward when teams play man-to-man and they force him to fit the ball in the tight windows. Can he consistently make those throws? That's the next step in his progression. But kudos to him for an outstanding debut performance.
Yeah, and before we get to Jameis Winston, I want to point out one other fact that this stood out to me this week. As much criticism as we gave the Seattle Seahawks for their call in the Super Bowl, I think I saw that same play down inside the 5-yard line this week several times. I know Tennessee ran it as well, were successful on it, where they run that slant, and there was no Malcolm Butler to drive on the football. So it was just kind of funny. A lot of times it's a reactionary league. You think that play is getting pulled out of every playbook in the NFL. I saw it a bunch.
No, I saw the bunch pick play. That's the play that you mentioned right there. Harry Douglas coming up under. A lot of things for him to do. Man, that last play that we saw on the clip, another run pass option read. Marcus Mariota really set up for success. Imagine, I can't wait till we get the stats like on Wednesday to see what his air yards were.
Yeah.
Because a lot of these
explain
throws,
that for those people
air
who don't
yards
know.
are like the amount of distance traveled for the ball from quarterback to the receiver. The fact that he finished the game with only 3 incompletions, but a lot of those throws were right at the line of scrimmage or within a 10-yard box, really set him up for a lot of success.
Now, on the other side, Jameis Winston. Look, I mean, I can, say I went back and watched the game. I haven't studied the game tape. I went back and watched the TV copy again, and you don't get a good feel for it until you get that all 22 and study it. To me, came out, was jittery. It was a lot of what we saw at Florida State. Terrible start. He gets undercut for an interception early on in that game. It's a pick 6.
Yeah.
I thought he rebounded, played better in the second half. But to me, Bucky, even, more troubling, I guess, than the turnovers. We talked about it last week. We thought 2 touchdowns, 2 picks. That's what we predicted for this game. So pretty much what we expected. But just some of the pocket stuff, he's an awkward athlete. And stepping on feet and tripping, and then he had to mishandle the ball back there. That's stuff that, you can't have that. You're going to have those mistakes down the field throwing the football, but you got to clean up some of that stuff inside the pocket.
Yeah, they have to clean up the stuff inside the pocket. He has to clean up his footwork, his mechanics, his balance and body control when it's time to deliver from the throwing platform. And they can help him, though, by making sure that they secure the inside and the outside to make sure he throws from a clean pocket. They're a work in progress. He'll continue to try and have to find a way to make those throws and understand the leverage. But look, the name of the game comes down to protecting the ball and making the plays when they're available. He didn't protect the ball well against the Tennessee Titans. He has to do a better job going forward.
And if I'm not mistaken, Dick LeBeau with the Tennessee Titans, if you look at his record and what he's done against rookie quarterbacks, good luck. The numbers aren't pretty. In fact, I think we have Brian Billick coming up a little bit later on the show. We need to talk to Coach Billick about that because I know Kyle Bowler and his first start for the Baltimore Ravens was against a Dick LeBeau coach team in Pittsburgh. Spoiler alert, although it happened a long time ago. It didn't go well. It did not end well, Bucky. So that's not an easy challenge there when you talk about being a rookie passer. Well, it'd be fun to watch these guys as the season develops. Jameis Winston, the one takeaway I would say, hey, even if you're down, you're not playing Louisville, okay?
Yeah.
You can't play with that reckless abandon. You're not going to get all those points back right away. It's still, you got to be methodical, protect the ball. If you lose games, it's okay right now. We want to see you show progress in that regard.
I think that's the big thing that the coaching staff has to get across to them. They have to convey the fact that, every time you're out there, make sure you play the game the right way. Take the check down when it's available. Understand how to work through your progressions. Do the things in the pre-snap phase in terms of making the site adjustments or the protection calls. Let's make sure we can try and get a clean performance out of you each week, and we'll deal with the scoreboard at the end of it.
All right, let's go on now to some scout notes, what stood out to us from week 1. And this, by the way, TD, can we get the sales staff on this? This is Scout Notes. Can we get a notebook sponsorship? Maybe
something.
Post-its? Yeah, something.
We're getting there.
I'm thinking a fancy Post-it graphic. We got all these fancy monitors behind us, like little yellow Post-it things.
We have a meeting right after the show talking about all of
this. Oh, beautiful. Get Sully on that. He needs something to do. He's a little lazy there. But, Bucky, things that stood out to me, first off, Tony Romo. What are your thoughts last night watching that game?
He continues to be what a lot of people don't want to give him credit for, and that is clutch. A guy who has 24 fourth-quarter comebacks during his career. That's most of anyone since 2006. It's his ability to make those plays when the game is hanging in the balance. He made plays orchestrating a 2-minute drill down the stretch, takes him 72 yards, 6 plays, uses the check down and the running backs. I saw a stat last night. He was 22 of 23 when targeting running backs and tight ends.
Wow.
So he understands how to use the middle of the field, how to use the underneath areas. When they're taking those primary playmakers away, the wide receivers on the outside, he's patient enough to rely on his underneath guys. Makes it very, very tough to defend an offense that can go horizontally as well as vertically.
I remember being in college and had an offensive coordinator when I was at Northeast Louisiana would take us out on the field and we'd do our walkthrough. And he would always talk about the 2-minute drill, Buck. So you'd start your 20-yard line. You're in street clothes, and he would just walk you through the field, and we'd be talking about it. And he just would say over and over again, first downs, not touchdowns. First downs, not touchdowns. And when that's your focus, and you take those 10, 15-yard little dump passes, You've got more time than you think in a 2-minute drill, and that to me was perfect textbook execution.
Yeah, the Giants bailed them out by not managing the clock at the end of their previous possession. So it gave them enough time to really take their time and be cautious and patient to work it down the field. But those first 2 plays where he was able to hit the running back underneath and move the ball down the field, that gave them the opportunity to really make those plays down to the goal line at the end of the drive. And
guys, is there a way to measure clutch for you guys scouts? Is there something you guys look at?
Well, I mean, look, there's numbers. I mean, basically, you can just look at how many comeback wins does he have. And Tony Romo, when you look at those numbers, he's right at the very top of the list. But when you're scouting guys in college, I always wanted to see, what they were like in those situations, Buck. Yeah. I know you want to see those tight games and see how guys perform on a big stage and pressure moments. To be quite frank, I mean, it's one of the reasons why I like Jameis Winston coming out of college, because when he was in those positions, you saw him succeed. You saw him rise up to that level. So I think it's something you definitely pay attention to.
Yeah, I think people definitely have it. I think you want to see it in the collegiate game. How do they run the 2-minute drill? How do they play in big moments, whether it's rivalry games, championship games? When the game is on the line and the game was within 7, how do they perform? We obviously in the NFL can track those statistics, like what are they like in the fourth quarter, what are they like when the game is up, when the game is behind 7 or the team is up 7. But in the collegiate game, with my own eyes, I want to see how do they deliver. Can I get a sense of this is a guy that's in command under duress? If I feel good about those guys, particularly quarterbacks in those moments, I'm really willing to endorse them when it comes time to read the report.
It's another reason, too, why I always feel you need to go see quarterbacks play live.
Have to.
When you're studying them on college. The tape doesn't give you a full understanding of that. And it's hard to explain, but there's a feel. When you get to a stadium and you feel the environment, and you can watch that quarterback not only on the field, but you pay attention to him on the sideline. You got your binoculars up there, and you're just studying him. And I can remember a guy like J.P. Lossman scouting him at Tulane, who was a first-round pick. But I got no feeling from him. I just got no energy. There was no he just didn't have it. And it's hard to describe, but he didn't have it. And you can see when you go to a game whether or not things slow down in big moments or whether they really speed up. And I think what we've seen from Tony Romo is he's able to really slow everything down.
It's funny that you talk about the importance of looking at quarterbacks live. That's one of the first things that I learned when I started scouting. They're like, you have to see quarterbacks live. You want to get a sense of what they're like live. You can get a better feel for their arm strength, their arm talent by being live and seeing the velocity right there in person. But also, you want to get a feel of being able to see how they interact with their teammates, their leadership skills. Do they bring their teammates together when the game is on the line?
Body language, guys.
When you talk about body language does matter, but more importantly, like the performance and how people respond to them. 2 examples for me: Teddy Bridgewater in the Sugar Bowl versus Florida his sophomore year. Mm-hmm. I was in the Superdome. I got a chance to see. He took a wicked shot early in the game, came back and carved up the Gators. So I felt really good about him during that year. And then, look, we were both at the Chick-fil-A Bowl with Johnny Manziel. And even though right now, early in his career, Johnny Manziel hasn't been their guy, there is something magical about what he exuded when he was a collegian. And so you're still kind of hanging your hat on the fact that, look, this guy played in big moments and delivered time and time again. Because of that, I'm a little more willing to jump on guys that perform in those moments, particularly in college.
I agree with you, Buck. Now, the next topic that is a guy I know we both liked coming out. I know you had some concerns, if I remember this correctly.
Yeah,
about
taking the top 10, yes.
Because you say you can't take an undersized receiver that high. And to be honest, you've been right so far. And Tavon Austin has not lived up to that billing. But I've suggested, look, he hasn't had anybody who knows how to use him.
Yeah.
No shot at Schottenheimer, Brian Schottenheimer. That didn't work. It did not work with him there in St. Louis. Didn't know what to do with Tavon Austin. And we saw finally some glimpses of what we saw of him in college against the Seattle Seahawks.
Yeah, we did. We finally saw a guy that is a multi-purpose playmaker, a guy that was used in a couple different aspects. They found a way to get the ball in his hands. And look, even though statistically it didn't look like a brilliant performance, we felt like Tavon Austin had an impact. And part of that is due to, like, Frank Cignetti, coached in college for a long time. He kind of understands how you kind of incorporate guys like a Tavon Austin into various situations to allow them to thrive. Putting him in the backfield, something that he's comfortable with because he was an all-state performer in high school as a running back. We saw him at West Virginia have a standout game there.
Remember against Oklahoma?
wore them out as a tailback.
Yeah.
So look, put him in his comfort zone, put the ball in his belly, use that speed, that quickness, and that punt return ability. We saw him do that.
Yeah, we said the stats weren't great, but there's 2 plays that stand out. It's obviously the 2 touchdowns he produced. This is not going to be a high-scoring game, not going to be too high-scoring when traditionally when you're playing against the Seattle Seahawks. You get 2 touchdowns, you put him in the backfield like you mentioned, Buck. And to me, Bobby Wagner, who we talked about on our show a couple weeks ago, he's probably the fastest linebacker side to side we have in the league.
Stop, start, quick.
They are even. Tavon Austin hits the speed button, and I mean he's not in the screen.
Yeah.
He is not anywhere near the screen. He has got such electric juice going to the edge, and he gets in the end zone. And then Buck, there's so many points on this punt return for a touchdown. I'll leave it up to you to decide what was the most important factor of that one.
You know, when you talk about punt returns, you talk about being able to catch the ball in plenty of space. Like you tell your blockers, like if you guys can give me just 10 yards of space, by the time I catch it, I should have an opportunity to produce a positive game. There we see the cushion. Here we see him attack the seam right away. Blockers in front, and when you take it down the boundary, good things happen. Tavon Austin's speed, but also his natural running skills and balance and body control allowed him to have a big play. Look, this is the second year in a row that the Rams have been able to beat the Seahawks because their special teams outperformed. This is what you want to see from Tavon Austin, making plays in the kicking game. That's part of the reason why they valued him as a top 10 pick.
Yeah, it's an interesting day for them when you look at their first-round picks. They've had a lot of them, right? A lot of top 15 picks with the way their team has performed over the last decade. But in this game, it wasn't just Tavon Austin. Robert Quinn went off again, had a bunch of pressures. I think he had a couple sacks. And then, to me, the best player on the field was Aaron Donald.
Yeah, I mean, I'm fascinated at how Aaron Donald was a guy that, as a collegiate at Pitt, super productive. Anytime you talk about a guy that has like 27 to 30 tackles for loss as a collegiate, as a defensive tackle, says a lot about him. But watching him as a pro, the quickness to get off the leverage, the ability to consistently play in the backfield, that's what I want from a guy that is a first-round talent. And when you look at that front line for the St. Louis Rams, they're loaded with blue-chip players because they invested the capital in those guys because the defense is the strength of their team.
He's interesting for me because I watched one game on him when he was getting ready to come out. So it was early on in his senior year, and somebody had told me about him. So I looked up his height, weight, speed, and so I'm like, okay, he's short, he's a little bit undersized. Man, he's got all kinds of production. I watched one game, like, man, this guy's pretty dynamic, pretty explosive. But, you know, this is what his estimated size is, so he's probably shorter, probably not even as big.
Yeah.
Okay, you know, I think he's probably a late first round, early second round guy. So then the next phase of the evaluation. So now I get the rest of the tape watching. I'm like, holy crud, this guy's really good. Okay, he's a top 20. He's a top 20 type pick. So then we go to the Senior Bowl, and nobody can touch him.
Dominates.
Completely dominates. And okay, now I just move him up a little bit. So I ended up getting him, I think, around like, I don't want to say 10th or 11th or somewhere around there on my list. But that's where we talk about your first reaction, how that kind of anchors where your grade is.
Yes.
So you can only go so far away from your first reaction. And in this case, I should have ignored that rule and just said, look, I've seen this guy on tape. He's dominated. I've seen him at the Senior Bowl. He dominated. Then he goes to the Combine, runs 4.65 like he's a freaking running back. All those things factor up together. I should have abandoned what my initial first thought was and even bumped them up higher.
A little bit, but I think size has to be a consideration because we have seen a lot of guys in college who've been able to be productive, but they don't have necessarily the prototypical dimensions to carry on their success in the National Football League. Aaron Donald is different because, like, when you watched him on tape, you saw the production stand out on tape. And then when you take him down to the Senior Bowl and he dominates and obliterates everybody in front of him, you're now beginning to say, like, wow, this guy does it against the people who are supposed to be the elite prospects in the country, goes to the Combine, checks all the boxes in terms of his athleticism and physical skill. So, look, he has lived up to billing. He has been a dominant player. Look, he was Defensive Rookie of the Year last year. He has an opportunity to be a good player for a long time because he's still learning. And what I like about the Rams, he's surrounded by Michael Brockers, Robert Quinn, a lot of young guys that are continuing to grow together. They can have their own fearsome foursome for a long time in St. Louis.
Yeah, no, he's going to be fun to monitor there. I want to switch now to the San Diego Chargers, Bucky, and a player. I know. I had him as my 18th player, I believe, in the draft. And I thought, like, I'm way up there on this guy. He ended up going in the third round. You like Keenan Allen even more than I did. I mean, I think you would have had him as a top 15 player in that entire draft class, and he went off 15 catches against the Detroit Lions. I think he tied Kellen Winslow for a franchise record. Anytime you're in the same company as K1, right? Because Kellen Winslow Jr. was K2, so I'm going to call him K1. You're doing something right.
Yeah, what I liked about what they've been doing with Keenan Allen is they're putting him on the move. Look, he's not the fastest guy, but when I watched him at Cal, I thought he had all the tools to be a number one receiver. We're seeing that. Catches the ball naturally, big body playmaker, a guy that can run routes at his size, and he is delivering for Phillip Rivers as that primary playmaker. Mike McCoy deserves credit for building that passing game around him, but Keenan Allen deserves credit for stepping his game up and living up to these lofty expectations that someone on the outside had for him.
I was talking with somebody in the NFL, and actually, no, it was a text message that I received from somebody that I really, really respect that knows what they're looking at. And all it said was, it just said 3 words. It said, Phillip Rivers, ... wow. and we talk about Keenan Allen, the 15 catches. He got 17 targets, so Phillip Rivers connected on 15 of the 17 times he targeted Keenan Allen.
Two of those were drops.
Yeah, 400-yard game for Phillip Rivers. I mean, for some reason, I think it's partly because he's in San Diego. They haven't won a championship. He's in that same class with Rivers and Roethlisberger that have been able to seal the deal. But is there a more underappreciated player in the NFL than Phillip Rivers?
You know, I think it's something about Phillip Rivers. I think it's some of the cocky, the country swag, as some people would say, like, because he kind of talks a lot. He does kind of have some whiny attributes that you don't like at a position. But when you watch him play, he's an ultra-competitive dude, a dude that finds a way to get it done. And if you think back a few years ago, we wondered if he could find his game after having a horrific year. He has come back and played brilliantly the last 2 years, and I like the way that he's hit his stride in terms of understanding how to use all of the weapons and all the routes and really using all areas of the field. Makes him very, very tough to defend.
I've mentioned this before on here, but Ron Marcinek, the old scout with me in Baltimore, and it was Phillip Rivers was coming out. We had some, decent grades on Phillip Rivers, and this is a guy that's been scouting for 40 years. We've done it forever. And he sits in the room and says, this is the closest thing I've seen to Johnny Unitas.
Wow.
He had been around Johnny Unitas. And everybody in the room went like, whoa, like you throw, like this is in Baltimore. You throw Johnny Unitas out there. That's strong take. So every time Phillip Rivers has one of these games, he's had a great career. Inevitably, I'll get a text from one of the scouts in Baltimore. He goes, Coach Ron got that one right.
Yeah, he did. I mean, like, he plays at a high level. He continues to do it. And it doesn't matter what receivers they surround him by. He finds a way to be productive. And so we talk about franchise quarterbacks, and we loosely toss around elite guys. Yeah. But Phillip Rivers is an elite quarterback because he raises the play of those around him. And we've seen it year in, year out. He deserves the credit and the praise that he gets.
All right, now, I didn't know that we'd be talking about this guy after the first week of the season.
Come on, you knew you'd make a reappearance?
No, I thought we'd have to wait a couple games. I thought week 5 we would see him. But we did, Josh McCown did the helicopter thing on the end zone.
What was he thinking?
I don't know, but that didn't end well. He gets a concussion. I guess they called it a head injury or a concussion. It wasn't good. He got hit pretty good. And then Johnny Manziel came in the game. Buck, your thoughts on Manziel's performance?
My initial impressions, I thought Johnny Manziel played pretty well initially. I thought I saw a guy that was more comfortable in what he was doing. I thought he was more decisive. I also thought the Browns had a better idea of what to do with Johnny. I saw the ball come out quickly. I saw him really handle the blitz and get it out of his hands. Made some plays, threw the ball down the field. There we see his first touchdown. And so Johnny was good early. But the longer the game went on, the more they were able to kind of get into him and make big hits on him. He was a little loose and careless with the football. Overall, I'm encouraged by what I saw from Johnny because I thought he made some plays. He just has to continue to understand how to stay within himself and not try and do too much for that offense.
And this was an example. And Russell Wilson in the offense that they run in Seattle, you have a short quarterback. The offense almost entirely off play action.
Yes.
So you get so much distance between the quarterback and the line of scrimmage. Off play action now you're 4 yards probably deeper than if you just take a regular drop. So that distance allows a short quarterback to see. I thought in this game, just doing pure drop back stuff with Johnny Manziel, Buck, he cannot see. I mean, he's in clean pockets, and he's trying to get out of there because I literally think he can't see down the field.
Yeah, I can see some of that also. I thought the things that he did really well when they opened the field up.
Yeah.
And they did empty formations because even though the field is empty, it really allows them to look at two guys to make quick rhythm decisions. Doing those things, which he did at Texas A&M, very comfortable with him. It will be interesting to see how much this offense changes with Johnny Manziel at the helm as opposed to what they were doing with Josh McCown.
Yeah, and having him, if he is going to be the starter and they know it early in the week, they can build a game plan around him. And
help him out.
Be a better.
They play Tennessee this week, so it could be a little ugly for Johnny. If we talk about Dick LeBeau, we saw what he did to Jameis.
Yeah, well, we'll see. It's look, the Jets are nothing to sneeze at defensively. They're a good group. Bucky, now I want to look at some throws. I'm not going to rank these throws from the week, but there's always individual plays that stand out to you, and there's throws. There's throws that mean something or tell us something. So I thought, let's just get 4, okay? You rattle off 2, I'll give you 2. I'll give you the first shot here. 4 throws that made a statement this week.
First one that stood out to me was Ryan Fitzpatrick hitting Brandon Marshall for a touchdown. And part of the reason I was kind of intrigued by this throw is because, look, everyone knows that Brandon Marshall is a perennial Pro Bowler, a big body specialist, a guy that can go up and get it. But we always wondered, could Ryan Fitzpatrick find a way to get it done? When we look at the video, you see a high point throw in that fade. He understood the placement. He allows Brandon Marshall to use his superior size over Joe Hayden. I like Joe Hayden. I think he's one of the best corners in the game. But Brandon Marshall is too big. Ryan Fitzpatrick acknowledged that and threw the ball in a place where only his guy could come down with.
I thought it was very interesting. In that game, the Cleveland Browns, with their Smurfs out there on the outside as wide receivers, I mean, you've got no room for error as a quarterback in that offense. You've got a bunch of undersized receivers. You get down the red zone, you've got no options.
Right.
Then you flip it over to the Jets. You get down the red zone, you've got Eric Decker and you've got Brandon Marshall. You've got 2 power forwards. I thought it made a statement from the standpoint of, hey, if we can just move the ball and get down within the red zone territory, it doesn't matter if it's Geno Smith, Ryan Fitzpatrick, we can throw the ball up to these guys and let them make a play.
I mean, you're a quarterback. You understand like how a big-body receiver can expand the strike zone. They basically have surrounded their quarterbacks, and they thought it would be a trouble position with guys that can erase some of the mistakes that they previously made. Geno Smith first, and now with Ryan Fitzpatrick. Brandon Marshall coming over gives them that guy. And look, Eric Decker has nice hands, 2 big-body targets. Both of those guys are very comfortable in their roles as the number 1 and 2 receiver, respectively.
The throw for me, I'm going to start off with Nick Foles. And Nick Foles is like the forgotten guy in the NFL. Because you would think Sam Bradford was traded. They just gave him away. They just gave Sam Bradford, who will be the MVP of the NFL, they gave him to the Philadelphia Eagles and got nothing in return. People forget that Nick Foles had a lot of success in Philadelphia under Chip Kelly. And the throw he made in this game to Stedman Bailey was a bucket throw. We talk about, when you watch players at training camp and they're throwing a football into a trash bin,
yes,
and people at home go, what in the world is that all about? It simulates throws like this one where you got to throw a 7 route, which is a corner route, and be able to drop it in the bucket between the corner and the safety. Yeah. Beautiful touch, beautiful ball placement there by Nick Foles.
Timing, touch, anticipation. We saw all of that on that throw. Being able to throw that 7 route, that sail route, when you have cover 1 coverage, meaning man-free. Richard Sherman is really trying to take away the outside. Earl Thomas is coming over. Being able to deliver it at the right and precise location says a lot about what Nick Foles brings to the table as a quarterback. Should allow the Rams to be much better and a much improved offense.
All right, give me another one, Buck.
Ryan Mallett. Look, we talked about Brian Hoyer on a previous thing on NFL Now being an underachiever. Ryan Mallett comes in and shows the spectacular arm talent that he brings to the table.
I'm going to apologize for the underachiever comment because I think you have to have achieved to. So I want to send my apology.
But here we talk about running, look, a circus route. This is a pogo when you talk about a post corner just hooking up. Watch Ryan Mallett get to there and deliver a dart between 2 defenders. Look, my man Marcus Peters had played good for most of the game. Find that dart right in the corner of the end zone. Ryan Mallett brings that kind of talent. And because of that, I think if you're Bill O'Brien and you're looking at the tape, it's a noticeable difference between what Mallett gives you the opportunity to do versus what Brian Hoyer gives you.
With Brian Hoyer, the field shrinks. And with Ryan Mallett, you can really expand the field.
Yeah, you can use all the options in the playbook.
Last one for me, and I could pick out any throw from this game, really. But you have to mention Aaron Rodgers. And the throw that he made, talk about undersized receivers down the red zone. Well, Aaron Rodgers doesn't have that problem when he wants to throw the ball to anybody, he can do it. And when you look at what he did to Randall Cobb, Bucky, we always talk in scouting about throwing into windows, right? And this is a nice little wheel route down in the red zone. He puts the ball not in windows. I say puts the ball in a mailbox because it's smaller than a window, and the ball placement for Aaron Rodgers is so off the charts ridiculous. And that's just one throw from this game. I could point out several others that he made to James Jones. It's not human what Aaron Rodgers does.
No, really a spectacular throw there on that wheel route. We talk about drag slant. It comes off the complimentary play that James Jones scored a touchdown early. He ran the slant with the arrow going to the flat. Then you run the wheel, but you're at the 2-yard line. So the fact that he was able to get the ball up and out and in the right location in that spot says a lot about his ball placement and accuracy as a top player.
All right, let's go 2-minute drill, and let's operate like Tony Romo did.
Let's be efficient. Let's get down the field.
Just a rookie review here real quick. Kind of go through these guys. Amir Abdullah.
That's your guy. I'm going to let you. You're all in on Amir Abdullah, so I'm going to let you talk about him.
He's an exciting young player. And he didn't get a lot of carries, 7 carries for 50 yards. But his first touch running the rock, I mean, when you looked at the video of this, Bucky, I felt so bad. You feel bad for Eric Weddle.
Yeah.
You're a safety This is the worst position you could ever be in as a safety. To have a person that's as laterally quick as Amir Abdullah to break free in the middle of the field with a two-way go. Explain to everybody what a two-way go is.
Two-way go, he can go either side. He has the field available to him. So when you're a defender, you're really in a pickle because you have no leverage. And the fact that he didn't have leverage, Amir Abdullah gets into the secondary, breaks him up, gives him a little head and shoulder fake, and just scoots into the zone. Eric Weddle falls down.
Yeah.
I mean,
Look,
that was a nice move.
You want to have a guy be able to pin him up against the sideline or at least have an angle on him. When you're facing a guy that elusive and that explosive, you got no shot. So Amir Abdullah, 7 for 50. Had a nice return of 43 yards and caught 4 balls. I thought it was a good start to him. In that same game, what did you think of Melvin Gordon?
I thought Melvin Gordon was solid. This is a guy that I had some concerns about, like, of late in the preseason because I felt like he was a little hesitant. He was a little indecisive in terms of how to attack the hole. I thought he was a little more decisive. I thought he was productive as a runner. But the thing that is really big in that offense, he caught the ball out the backfield, had 3 receptions, made contributions in the passing game. And so when I'm the San Diego Chargers and I got my guy to be my feature back, he has to be kind of a two-phase player. He showed me that he possibly could be that guy. Here we see on the swing pass. This allows him to stay on the field on early downs, even though Danny Woodhead will come in the field to replace him on third down and passing situations.
Yeah, I thought Melvin Gordon looked good. I think he's going to be just fine for the San Diego Chargers. Yep. Woodhead did a nice job, had a couple touchdowns. But I think you're just going to see Melvin Gordon get more and more comfortable as the more playing time he gets. Everybody freaks out about the preseason. Preseason is fool's gold. Okay, just do the Men in Black thing, do the little flash deal, and just forget it. It did not happen. It does not exist. Melvin Gordon's going to be just fine. Another one that's going to be just fine, a rookie. Why do you kick the ball to Tyler Lockett?
I don't know.
How does that happen?
I don't know how many times he has to take it back, but I think if I'm a special teams coach, I don't want Tyler Lockett to touch it. And look, I'll be the first to tell you that I'm biased, I'm partial. I played with his dad, Kevin Lockett, in Kansas City for a number of years. This is a guy that is special to me. Look, his ability to return kicks makes them a dangerous team to have to deal with. Look, first rookie with a 50-plus yard punt return touchdown since Deion Sanders. How about that?
Prime time.
How about that? So that's what you're talking about. That's what you get when you get this guy. For me, I think he's Percy Harvin 2.0 for the Seahawks. He is going to be a guy that can be a major weapon for them as they go forward. Look for Tyler Lockett to play a lot on that team.
One more rookie I want to mention on the defensive side of the ball. We've talked about him on here before because in the preseason he had some good
ups and downs.
But Ronald Darby is gaining in confidence, the corner for the Buffalo Bills. He went up and got one. I think it was T.Y. Hilton just running with him right down the field. It was phenomenal performance for him. 6 tackles, couple PBUs, and a pick. Not a bad start for the Florida State rookie.
Not a bad start at all. And look, this is one of the things because I'll be the first to say that Ronald Darby and P.J. Williams, both at Florida State, I had a higher grade on P.J. Williams. I talked to one of the directors at Buffalo, and he said, look, Ronald Darby is the guy for me because he's competitive. He is a track star. He has that athleticism, and we believe that we could get him trained. And so he goes to Buffalo with Dennis Thurman and Donnie Henderson, 2 guys that have worked together, trained a lot of DBs. They have him on track, and if he can play as a young guy with Stephon Gilmore emerging as a lockdown corner on the other side, gives them a lot of options on how they can attack the offense.
Those are 2 very good coaches, by the way. I was around all those guys at the Baltimore Ravens. I know you go way back with DT, with Dennis Thurman. And Donnie is, I've never seen anybody ride a DB like Donnie Henderson.
So now they get to play good cop, bad cop.
Yeah, it's exactly what it is. Is that standard? Because I'm running through my head now and I'm thinking, yeah, the good secondaries I've been around that we did. We had the guy that would just ride people all day long. Then you got the assistant come
hey,
just take it in. You're doing great. You look good out there.
Yeah, and so those guys work together. And look, Rex Ryan does a great job. It's a defense that's predicated on the play of the corners on the outside. They develop young corners as well as anybody. When I look at that secondary, so much was made about that front line and that defensive line in particular. That secondary is kind of growing in front of our eyes. If they play at a high level, man, that defense is going to be the top defense in the National Football League.
We had Chris McAllister on that team. He was a great corner. Yeah. He wouldn't really say much at practice. Donnie Henderson, our secondary coach, was the one talking trash to the receivers the entire practice. I just remember being out of practice. You'd be watching another drill. You'd hear, "Shut up, Donnie! Shut up!" He was always talking to people. But anyways, that team. I wanted to get into that a little bit more. That Bills secondary, because I think their front's the best front in the NFL. As much as we've made about Miami and their additions, the Jets have all their guys. Seattle's got a good group. They get after. The Rams have all those first-rounders. But to me, that Buffalo front is the best. And I think it even overshadowed how much young talent they've accumulated in the secondary. And forget the pass rush, forget dominating up front. There wasn't a whole lot of places for Andrew Luck to throw the football.
No, and talking to Dennis Thurman prior to the game and the weeks leading up to the game, he felt like they had a good plan. He felt like they had the personnel that matched up really well with the Colts. And they were going to throw a lot of things at Andrew Luck. They felt like they could get after him with 4. And so if you can get after him with 4, that means when you bring pressure, you certainly can get home. They exposed some of the weaknesses of that offensive line. They kept him on the move and under duress. And anytime quarterbacks get hit, they change. And I felt like they did a great job of changing how Andrew Luck performed by getting after him. And to think that they didn't do it with Marcel Darius, that's crazy.
No, they're going to have a very, very good defensive side of the ball there. And the guy running the show there for the Buffalo Bills, Rex Ryan, who coached under one of my favorite people in the National Football League, a guy that works here with us now. I worked with him in the Baltimore Ravens, but we're fortunate to have him with us here on Move the Sticks, and that's Super Bowl winning coach, Brian Billick. Well, if you want impressive resumes, our next guest has one. And I think Coach Billick, who I had a chance to be around for 4 years with the Baltimore Ravens, who obviously has a Super Bowl winning head coach, but people forget around maybe the best offense of all time in the NFL with the Minnesota Vikings as the offensive coordinator, then around maybe the best defense of all time with those Baltimore Ravens. So he can talk about everything. And plus his BYU Cougars are playing out of their minds. Playing out of their minds right now. Coach, how you doing?
Cougars are going good. I don't know anything about football, but I know who to hang around that plays some good football. So, no, it's been great fun watching the Cougars and love talking football with you guys.
Well, Coach, we're excited to have you here as going to be a regular with us here on Move the Sticks. And it's a good time to have you after the game on Sunday night, Dallas Cowboys and the New York Giants, and just a head-scratcher to everybody that's watching, I think. And I'm sure as soon as the game was over, it was to Coach Coughlin as well. But you have almost 40 years combined experience with head coach and quarterback. How does that happen at the end of that game, the decision-making?
Yeah, it was fascinating. I was jumping back and forth between the game and the U.S. Open, and then so I watched the tail end of the Giant game with the Cowboys. And once they had driven down the field, I'll be honest with you, the time I figured this over, I went to bed. I had to get up this morning, go back and look at the film. I have less issue. There's a lot, obviously, Coach Coughlin's got to look at right now. I have less issue with the pass on third down on the goal line than I do with the fact that my defense allowed Dallas in under a minute 30 to go 7 plays the length of the field and score a touchdown. It's those calls, particularly the first calls. You guys know, on 2-minute offense and defense, as a defense, the key is don't give them productive yards on the first play. That's the key. You know, the old argument about bend and don't break and how passive should you be. But every offense is looking to get that good chunk of yard. They gave up 24 yards on the first play. They gave up 16 yards both to the back coming out of the backfield. I have a little more issue. I would be sitting having a little more issue with my defensive coordinator, Steve Spagnuolo, than I would with my offensive coordinator, Ben McAdoo, about why the heck did you throw it on third down?
You know, Coach, before you even get to the third down play, this came up to me on Twitter. Do you feel like you have to remind the quarterback to understand the situation when you're running down the clock and you're in that situation? We're moving. Do we want to take it all the way down to under 5 seconds before we snap? Is that something that you would routinely do with your quarterback? Or do you expect a veteran quarterback to kind of have that sense of awareness that I need to take this all the way down?
Well, it depends on just that. Do I have a veteran guy? I think Eli Manning, like his brother Peyton, and you got to remember, these guys have grown up sitting talking football in these situations at the dinner table their entire life with their dad, Archie Manning. So these are two of the better quarterbacks that, and when you listen and you have a chance to watch Eli Manning, he does do a lot of that. Now, it may not be perfect, but he does, tells the back, make sure you stay in bound. I'm going to draw this. He's telling his offensive lineman, I'm going to draw this out a little bit. Could they have done a little bit better job? Absolutely. And obviously Ben McAdoo in the headset, I'm sure, as was Coughlin telling Ben McAdoo. I thought it was interesting to hear Tom Coughlin after the game say it was my fault when he said it was my fault that we threw the ball on third down. What that really means is it's my fault, and I'll take the responsibility for letting my dumbass coordinator call a pass on third down. and it's hard to imagine that Tom Coughlin, whether he wasn't processing that, whether he wasn't hearing it, it made it sound like I had no idea they were going to throw the ball on third down. I'll get that corrected. It's
interesting, Coach. Bucky was bringing up the point about what you would communicate in a headset. I've heard rumors. I haven't heard it substantiated, but that Chip Kelly, when they'll call a play into the helmet, that there'll actually be instruction in there, like here's the play call, here's what you're looking at, here's where the ball should go. Is in terms of what gets communicated into that headset for a quarterback, have you ever had a quarterback or been in a situation where you felt the need to provide more than just a simple play call?
Yeah, when you have a young quarterback. I remember when we first got the play calling, coach to quarterback play calling system, I had Warren Moon. And this was something new that you're thinking, gosh, I get to, and so you found yourself not only calling the play, but reinstalling every play during the game. Now, remember, the back's going to chip to the, and at some point, Warren said, Coach, just give me the play. You're killing me. You're wearing me out. And you got to be very careful about trying to give them too much information. What we found is you wanted to give them trigger words or special emphasis if there's a particular play, maybe a reminder. I would actually go through with my quarterbacks on Saturday and saying, okay, of our play calls here, is there any that you want a reminder? Maybe it's a redirection of a protection. Maybe you're tagging something on the backside. Maybe the depth, whatever it may be. You didn't want to overdo it, but try to empower the quarterback to say, okay, do you know what we're doing tomorrow? And is there anything in particular you want some help with? But it is hard not to want to coach them up a little bit. We just talked about, does a quarterback like Eli Manning get someone in his head saying, hey, remind the back to don't go out of bounds, and remind the line you're going to be on a slow, late snap count. By the same token, do you give them too much information? In Chip Kelly's offense, I can imagine there's a good deal of that. Sam Bradford's been around long enough. I imagine after a while, Sam's going to go, Coach, I could use a little less help.
Coach, a lot of what we're talking about is situational football. And I know from being around locker rooms and you obviously having a lot of success as a head coach, you go through situations in your head before you get to game time. Pete Carroll in overtime elects to kick an onside kick. It's something that's a little unusual. What did you think about the call, and when do you make that decision to say, you know what, we talked about it during the week, this is how we're going to proceed in overtime?
Yeah, that was an interesting sequence, and then to watch Pete and to have him explain it afterwards, where he said the onside, that wasn't what we were supposed to do. Now, when you look at their alignment on the kickoff, it didn't look like the onside kickoff. The kicker, they sounded like, if you want to believe Pete, and there's no reason not to, that they wanted to pooch kick it in behind the line. They didn't want to kick the ball off to Tavon Austin. They wanted to pooch kick it, which I would even question that a little bit, down around that 30-yard line area. Make the second level, or make a Tavon Austin come up and have to scramble around and hope you can get him down right there at the 30, maybe the 35. If that was the case, then obviously the kicker did a miserable job with it. You can argue whether that was the right call or not, because no, when you view your team as the strength of your team is defense, and I've certainly had my share of those teams, to say, you know what, I'm going to spot you field position. If strength is my defense, I'm going to kick you down as far as I can, because in overtime, what is it? It's just not a matter of scoring. It's the change of field position. When we had those great defenses, DJ, it was, I'll kick it down, I'll make you 3 and out, punt it. Now I've got field position on the 40, 45-yard line, and even my offenses, as much as we struggled at times, we can maybe go 15, 20, 30 yards and kick a field goal.
Just got to get to the 35 for Stover, Coach. That's
right. That's right. Where that line is.
Hey, the other decision in that game, 4th and 1. I don't know if you were watching the game live while it was happening, but I'm sitting there going, there's 0.0% chance this ball goes anywhere but Marshawn Lynch after the Super Bowl. Have you ever been in a situation where something that's happened in the past has 100% dictated the play call you're going to make in the future?
Oh, sure. You may not admit to it, but we're nothing if not a collective perspective of our past experiences. And you can make a very strong case that they really should have thrown the ball in that situation given what they had done before. As we know, we've talked about it a million times. Play calling is looked through a prism of if it works, you're a genius. If it doesn't, you're the village idiot. Strictly on was it the right call, was it the right configuration? No, it either worked or it didn't work. The logic in doing what they did on the goal line in the Super Bowl is very, very clear. And you can make the case that they needed to throw the ball then. And based on the call of the New England Patriots, they probably made the right call. But what does it come down to? Execution of the players. The same thing could be made of the other day. Because of the tendencies that you've had, you could have made a case to say, look, they know we're going to run the ball, so now we're going to do a quick play action fake and throw it. We trust Russell Wilson. We'll put it on the edge. But there again, if they'd have given it to done that play action fake, and the defense jumps all over Marshawn Lynch and they don't convert on it, what would we be doing? Saying, are you kidding me? Did you not learn your lesson? Why don't you give it to the back? So it sounds like I'm making excuses for the coach, but it really is. Those kind of calls are a product of what is their tendency, what is your tendency, what has gone on during the course of the game. This is not just a yee-haw, let's just go do it, and handing the ball off to Marshawn Lynch for 1 yard. There again, I would have less of an issue with the play call than I would with my offensive line going, guys, how could we not get 1 yard with Marshawn? How did we let that excellent defensive line of the St. Louis Rams get the penetration? All we needed was 1 friggin' yard.
Hey, Coach, one of the calls that a head coach always has to make is understanding what his quarterback brings to the table. One of the guys that we're kind of seeing appear to deteriorate in front of our eyes is Peyton Manning. When you're a head coach and you have an aging star quarterback who's been so successful, when do you kind of step in and talk to him about we need to pull back the reins and allow some of the supporting players to carry some of the load that you're used to carrying?
Well, when you look and obviously did watch the game, I want to attribute the poor offensive output that we saw in the Broncos-Ravens games to 2 really good defenses. We knew the Ravens would play great defense. Obviously, Wade Phillips has got that Denver defense playing lights out, and that certainly is a factor. But that conversation that you just outlined had to be had back in February between John Elway and Peyton Manning before hiring Gary Kubiak, saying, look, this is John Elway speaking, Peyton, this is what we need to do go forward. I lived it. I had to change the way I did things. We had to let this become Terrell Davis's team in defense. I'm not going to be a 650 throw guy, and it got me 2 Super Bowls. You're at that point in your career. I want to bring Gary Kubiak in. I want to be more balanced. We'll do away with some of the Omaha high-tempo stuff. You're not going to be a 650 throw, and we'll play good defense. That's exactly what we got on Sunday. And the question mark will be 2 things jump out at me. One, if the lack of offensive productivity is truly a function of that offense, at some point Peyton's going to go, hey, whoa, this isn't what I signed down for. You know, I've been pretty good doing it my way. Are we sure we want to do this? But more importantly, you know, Peyton Manning, one of the reasons he's been so good for so long, he doesn't get hit a lot. He gets the ball out of his hands. He always orchestrates things where he knows he has an immediate outlet, so he keeps his percentage high, his completion percentage high, but you don't get a lot of clean hits on him. I saw him hit more in this game than I think I saw in all of last year. The style of the offense is dictating that a little bit. I think they're going to have to take a good, long, hard look at what they're asking Peyton to do, and that's a young offensive line that Denver has, because I'm not sure he's going to finish the season.
Yeah, Coach, it is a young offensive line, but I think the protections are completely different in this system, and I don't think Peyton Manning's all that comfortable with it. My biggest concern when I watch him at this point in time with this offense, Coach, he missed a shot. He misses a deep shot down the field in this game. And after that happened, it felt like the entire field just shrunk. And at that point in time, the Baltimore Ravens just said, we're squatting on everything. If you're going to beat us, you're going to have to beat us over the top. He misses a layup deep ball. And after that, you saw them squat at the sticks. And one of those plays culminated in kind of a lollipop out to the flat. Jimmy Smith picks it off and takes it back for 6. How much of a challenge is that? I mean, because people say arm strength is overrated and it's all about accuracy and touch. Well, if you can't stretch the field, it shrinks on you in a hurry. I don't care who your quarterback is. That is difficult football.
It is. Bucky, you alluded to it earlier in the segment before me about we all know that the deep ball is not a function of arm strength. This isn't about the arm strength of Peyton Manning. It's about touch and timing. That's what the deep ball is all about. And if indeed Peyton Manning, all of the glove, and can he feel in his fingertips, he's at an age, and we all know now, Father Time's undefeated. And it may not be now, because remember last year about this time, we were questioning what about Tom Brady. Maybe it's time for him. Maybe he's over the hill. Maybe it's time for him to leave. Maybe it's done. That didn't turn out quite that way, obviously. At some point, it will be over for Peyton Manning. We don't know if it's that time now, but I agree with you 100%, DJ, when it was the fact that he didn't have that typical touch and that timing of getting the deep ball. And the minute a defense like the Ravens, who understand Peyton Manning's all about getting the ball out of his hands early, I'm going to dink and duck, when they can come and sit down on that, just the way you're alluding to, that very much added to the fact that he had to hold on to the ball and why they got so many sacks.
Now, Coach, we just talked about having a veteran quarterback who's kind of on the climb. What about the challenges of coaching a young quarterback that's trying to make his mark in the league, namely when they're struggling early in their career? Let's talk about Jameis Winston, and if you were the coach, how you help a young quarterback find their way as the leader of an offense.
Well, and we talked about this all last week, whether it was Mariota or Jameis Winston. The biggest thing, obviously, they got to learn. You know, your mistakes are really the only thing you can lay claim to, right, as being your own. And these young quarterbacks have to make mistakes. It's the only way they're going to learn. You understand that when you get a starting quarterback. The question is, what's going to be the cost of those mistakes? Those young quarterbacks have to recognize, I'm going to let the talent around me help me win. It doesn't have to all be me. DJ, remember, we started Kyle Bowler in 2003. Mm-hmm. We went 10-6 and won the division. Kyle Bowler had a typical rookie season, under 60% completion, more interceptions than touchdowns. But he had the number one defense in the league, led the league in takeaways, and we had the number one rushing offense in the league. He knew to let that talent around him. Now, these guys don't have those combinations. What surprised me yesterday, going in, you would have thought of the two, Jameis Winston probably had a chance to be a little bit better because of his supporting cast when he had, obviously, Mike Evans on the outside, although he had the hamstring injury, the running back Martin, he's got Austin Seferian-Jenkins, he's got Viston Jackson. I don't know that Marcus Mariota had those assets, all but maybe with a better offensive line. The problem becomes for your young quarterback going forward, it's really the same thing. Ken Whisenhunt has got to tell Marcus Mariota, hey, 4 touchdowns, that's awesome, man, but we still got a long way to go. Here's where you made some mistakes, and you got to continue to improve. The hard thing for Lovie Smith, and I'm going to write about that this week with Jameis Winston, it may not be fair. It's fine if you start your young quarterback and he has a kind of day that Jameis Winston had. That's cool. But not when the guy across the way was the guy you didn't take in lieu of taking Jameis Winston, and he has a 4-touchdown performance. Their numbers were not dramatically different. Jameis Winston's had to throw it 33 times. You don't want your rookie throwing it 33 times. And obviously Mariota did a great job of hitting it, and the guys ran with it. So obviously there's a lot of work still to be done there, but a magnificent start for him. Now Lovie Smith, even though he will be supportive of Jameis Winston, no, we're fine. The fact that it was against Marcus Mariota, you better believe there's people in the building, your fan base, your ownership are going, "Whoo, boy, did we get the right guy?" And then the question for Lovie Smith has to be, I thought we were going to be better on defense. How did we let a rookie quarterback gash us that way against the side of the ball that was supposed to be our strength this year?
Coach, I'm going to give you a really tough challenge here because this is the last question for you. But that first game, I remember Kyle's first game was against Pittsburgh and Dick LeBeau.
It was.
Jameis Winston's first game was against the Tennessee Titans and, of course, Dick LeBeau. If you had one word to describe how excited you were or to describe the feeling of knowing your rookie quarterback, his first start is going to be going up against a Dick LeBeau-led defense, in one word, how would you describe it?
Yeah, sporting.
What was it?
Sporting. You're quite a sportsman. And I'll mangle the numbers here, but I remember it vaguely in something last year that Dick LeBeau against rookie quarterbacks is like
1,000,000.
Yeah, 57-2 or whatever. I mean, it was some unbelievable number, and obviously, and keep in mind, he obviously is due his own is Ray Horton, the defensive coordinator. I know Dick LeBeau's there. He's advising Ray Horton, who I think is a great coordinator and will be a head coach in this league one day. Kind of put the thing together in Arizona, as he did in Cleveland, then went with Ken Wisenhunt to Tennessee. So they have two very good coaches there. That was going to be an uphill battle for Jameis Winston at best.
Well, Coach, I appreciate you taking some time to spend with us here on Move the Sticks. And Father Time is not undefeated against you, because I guarantee you got a bike ride coming up today. How many miles are you getting in?
I'll knock out an easy 25.
That a baby. That's Super Bowl winning head coach Brian Billick going to be joining us. TD, is Coach Billick going to be with us every week, I'm hoping?
That is the plan. Every Monday we're going to have Coach Billick with us, to break down all this coaching takes. I love the coaching takes.
Oh, he's the best. He is so good. He can make a lot of complicated stuff involved in football. He can really make it very simple and easy to understand for everybody out there. Well, Bucky, we got another one in the books, man.
Another one in the books.
Move the Sticks. Look, I love doing this twice a week. Me and Bucky, we'll be back later this week to talk about the games coming up on the weekend.
Thanks for downloading Move the Sticks with Daniel Jeremiah. For more, go to NFL.com/podcasts.